Hi there, my name's Gill Tiney. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learned an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hi there, welcome to Collaboration Global's Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm delighted to say we are joined by one of our newer members, Gill Smith, known for being part of the Business Kitchen over in Somerset and Gloucester and all around that West Country area. But Gill and I have known each other probably coming up for 10 years, I believe. It's gone back a long way. But she's only recently rejoined our community. So I'm delighted to have her on the podcast. Welcome, Gill. Lovely to have you here.
Great to be here, Gill.
Fantastic. So we have a lot in common, both business coaches, both passionate about small businesses, and constantly nattering away like we do. And it was like, we really should put this on a podcast. It could be really interesting. So hopefully we will. But I really want to delve into who Gill Smith is. For people that know me really well, know that my married name is Brown. So Gill Brown and Gill Smith. It seems like a marriage made in heaven. What, first of all, drew you to come back to the Collaboration Global community, and what is it about collaboration that kind of makes you go, that's interesting, I want to know more about that?
I think partly because we've known each other for a long time, and I've always been very inspired by what you do and what you stand for and what you want Collaboration Global to be. But I think as a lot of these things, it was about timing. It was about, because I know we talked about it for probably about a year and a half, and the diary didn't work and the timing didn't work, and then the timing, the things aligned and they came together, so it was the right time to join.
Yeah,
we need more kindness in the world, and we need more love of each other in the world. And I think any business network or collaboration or whatever it is that can bring that to the piece can only be a good thing. I think we'd all like to be part of something like that. So it was great to join you guys and to see what we can do together over the next coming years.
I'm excited. I definitely am excited by what we can achieve. And I agree with you about the good thing. We now have the B Corporation, don't we? And we have the wonderful charity that we're partnered with, B1G1, which is known as Business for Good. And I think there is a wave of people realizing the power they have within their business to actually not just create widgets and do the doing, but actually making something of their business that will support and help other people. I know one guy, John Pritchard, give him a little name shout, and he's got a company called Parlour Eyewear, and he sells beautiful designer sunglasses. If anybody wants to go and check his email at PALA, Parlour Eyewear, and every single pair of sunglasses that are sold generates an income for, I believe, a village in Africa, but also the materials that are used, the cases that are made, all come from industries, cottage industries of people that are, creating something from very, very little and in sustainable sources. And it's taking him such an effort to do that and be from day one knowing he's not running a business that sells sunglasses. He's running a business that helps other people in a different part of the world. He happens to be doing that through selling sunglasses that are gorgeous. And I think what you just said about being around people that want to do that, it just means that you're not in the grind. You're in something that's bigger than you, something that you can be proud of, to go, because of them, because of this, I'm doing that, and this is making a difference, and you can trace back where your impact is being made.
I totally agree. And I think one of the things for the Business Kitchen is that I took a decision 3-4 years ago now, so pre-pandemic, that we really wanted to, we were very interested in carbon footprint, being carbon neutral. But as a very, very small business do you do that? I mean, we have now been carbon neutral for 2 years.
Wow.
About to certify for the third one. And everybody says, oh, but it can't make a difference. But if the thousands of businesses in the UK, the little businesses like the kitchen, actually did that, it's that small hinges swing big doors.
Oh, what a great phrase. I love that.
Collaboration Global is all about small hinges swing big doors. So that community of people making what looks like a tiny difference adds up to being a big difference, and that it will get to that tipping point where it creates momentum as well, and then it becomes almost self-fueling. But I think I've known about BIG1 for ages, and we have contributed to them a little bit. But one of the things I'm working on in Gloucestershire at the moment, although I'm based in Somerset, is we're working on a project called Together Gloucestershire, which is all about looking at how the bigger companies can use local suppliers for some of the things that they do. And there's a whole initiative going on in there with the really big companies in Gloucestershire, which there are several, is how do they make their tendering and their buying process and their procurement process more accessible for micros.
Yeah.
And how does that all fit into the ESG values, and that whole thing around the United Nations 17 pillars, and every single business can look at those pillars and say, which of those can I do something about? Now, I can't do much about clean water. I can contribute to water aid, but we can do something about some of the other pieces, and we've all got responsibility to do it.
Oh, that's the word, isn't it? And I think a lot of people think, oh, it's too big. What can little old me do? What's the point of me recycling this and that when the big companies are not doing anything? But it doesn't mean we absolve ourselves of responsibility just because the big companies are dumping loads of waste in the water. Hampshire is case in point. It's disaster what's going on over there. But I think when we take on, as Gina Gardner says, one of our other members, radical responsibility, and look at every area that we can change and help our carbon footprint. I wasn't aware that your company was carbon neutral. I think that's a real flag to wave.
A real interesting thing. I mean, we want to go net, we do want to go net zero, but the challenge is that, of course, you're dependent then on your suppliers. So question, what are Zoom doing about their footprint? Where are they on their recycling and thing? Because they're part of our supply chain. So until they're great, until they're done, kitchen can't be done because we're users of it. Yeah. So it's a complex thing to look at, but it also gives you some amazing insights into your business.
But I can imagine if lots and lots of people are doing what you're doing, then they can then start putting pressure on people like Zoom to make the difference. So you feel like you're doing it all on your own, but when there's a few of you gathered together as
I have messaged their CEO.
Oh, well done.
I have not had a response.
Oh dear. Maybe next year. Don't give up.
We'll keep picking, it's that pick.
What was interesting is I was talking to somebody the other day about deleting emails because of the carbon footprint, and they're like, what are you talking about? Emails don't take up any. I went, oh yeah.
They're sitting on a bloody server farm somewhere.
But it's amazing how many people don't kind of cotton on to that. And
people seem to think this cloud is literally a cloud.
Yes,
right?
It's pretend make-believe Disney up in the sky. Yeah.
It is sitting on a computer somewhere.
Yes. And what was fascinating to me is I found out on Richard, what's his name? House of Games. Richard Osman. And one of the questions is how many carbon, what was the expression? Carbon tons are there. If everybody in the UK deleted one email, how many carbon tons would be saved? And they were coming up with 11, 17, 21, 128,000.
Or small hinges swing big doors.
Exactly. And I'm in a habit now of not last year's, but the year before. So I'll go back and I'll delete all those emails. And it's like, to hell with it. If I haven't answered before now, or it's too late. No, exactly. But not just the unopened ones, but every single email is gone, right? And so everything else I've saved, in all the important stuff has been saved somewhere. But it's like how many wasted things that are just sitting there that are creating such a, and again, if we just got good in our housekeeping online, then we can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really fascinating to know that you are walking the talk around climate change. and making it. And this is the thing, is it doesn't take much for all of us to do a little tweak, a little something.
Well, one of the interesting things now I live in Somerset is that, I mean, I live in the middle of a 300-acre farm. I rent a barn, but so curbside recycling is interesting because it's actually a mile's drive.
Oh, you're showing off now.
But having said that, the recycling centres locally are quite amazing. I mean, I've taken stuff, you know, because when we used to run face to face, we had folders and printouts and dividers, and I was never going to use any of that stuff again. So it all needs to be recycled. But I haven't put it in the recycling because it doesn't quite fit any of the bins.
Right.
The recycling tip, it goes straight to energy and creates electricity for houses in Avonmouth.
Oh, wow.
None of it goes to brownfield.
That's brilliant. That's satisfying, isn't it?
It takes time, and you've got to put in the effort to find the information to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
That's our responsibility to do that, you know.
And it's also frustrating. I don't know about you, but local authority do not make it easy to find the information to know where these things have got to go. I must admit, it's you've got to really put yourself out sometimes to find out, you know, where you're supposed to recycle things. And then there's the damning stories about how one person in a street can contaminate their recycling bin, and it means the whole lot gets.
I know, yeah, but that's about responsibility as well, isn't it? You know, if you're going to do it, I mean, it's down to a values thing. If you're going to do it well.
Yeah,
because you do everything well.
You should do. Oh, so that's a good question. What would you say your values are in life or in business?
They probably overlap fairly heavily. Integrity always comes out highly. I think honesty, obviously, slightly caveated with being kind to people as well. They sometimes don't sit too well together.
Yeah, there's honest and there's honest, isn't there?
There's honest and there's honest, yeah. I mean, I think from a business point of view, work ethic, you know, I've always had a good work ethic. I tend to be an early riser. I tend to be wanting to be finished, you know, sort of middle afternoon. I'm not a great evening thing for getting things done. But I think just the others I would say was really understanding that everybody has a different journey and we never know what those are, and we must simply respect where people are. And I think years ago, you know, if somebody was rude or something, I would react to that. I think we have to be careful about making excuses for people who are rude, because I think they're rude. But I think also, but we've also got to look at people, particularly if they're acting slightly out of the norm of how they normally be. I think we've got to stand back from that and ask ourselves, okay, fine, so why are they behaving like that today? You know, why have they just been nasty to me?
Yeah. And
is it my reaction that they've been nasty to me? Have they really been nasty to me, or am I just taking it the wrong way because I've had a bad day or I didn't get enough sleep or whatever it might be? So I think that whole in respecting people's point of view and where they're coming from, and then you make decisions about whether you want to deal with them or not. And if they're not, they behave in a way you don't like, then don't get into it with them.
Yeah.
Walk away, just don't have them in your life.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't surround, I mean, it's so easy, isn't it, to realize historically these are the people in my life, and then if you take time to think about it, go, actually they're really negative and they get quite angry, and then you look at the 5 that you associate with the most, and it's like, oh, I'm one of them. Oh gosh, am I really? And you have to kind of reevaluate. I did this many years ago, and everyone said, move away from people that are negative in your life, and I was like, well, how do I move away from my mum? I mean, it's really hard because she's so negative. But there was ways. So I used to go down for the day to see her when she lived a little way away, and I realized that if she lived around the corner I could pop in. So for a day I couldn't keep up the be nice to my stance, but for 10 minutes I could be nice to anybody. So and because her negativity was born from all sorts of reasons of her childhood, her, you know, the experiences that she had brought about this. What's the point? You know, this was only going to happen anyway.
It's slightly generational probably as well, because I think one of the advantages we have as the generation we are and generations coming up is that people are much more aware of thinking about why people are behaving, you know, and trying to think about how our minds affect how we live and what we can achieve, which I don't think my parents' generation really had.
There was no personal development, was there, or anything?
And then let's face it, they've lived through a war.
Yeah, they deserve to be grumpy. To be fair, I think I would be if I'd come out the other end. Yeah, and at that point, PTSD hadn't been invented, had it? And they all like Nobody spoke about it. It's like stiff upper lip, get on with it. Whew, and now we know better, don't we? It's incredible.
I'm very different. You know, my dad was had very Victorian. I didn't know any of my grandparents, but my dad had a very Victorian upbringing. So we were very much brought up as children have seen, not heard, which of course is definitely not what happens these days. But he was a civil servant. He was, you know, he was in the military. He ran away to become a boy soldier because he had an argument with his brother. As you do when you're 15. So he went off and he was in the police and in the Royal Horse Artillery and all sorts of different things. But he ended up in the civil service in what was then the Department of Labour. That was his lifetime job, and that's what you did. You got a good job and you stayed there.
Yeah.
And when I was I trained as a chartered accountant originally, never used it really, and when after 3.5 years, because if you train with the big guys, it's auditing anyway, it's not really very much accounting. You do your accounting for your exams, but the rest of it is actually really interesting. It's looking at how businesses work and how their controls work and everything else. He was horrified. I said I was going to go, but you're an accountant, you know, you've got this fantastic job, you know, you should stay there for the rest of your life. Yeah, I have a boredom threshold of about 3 years in any particular job. So.
Wow, which is the dumb thing nowadays, isn't it? Or this sort of younger generation, yeah, I need to move because of my CV. I've got to keep my CV looking good and being shown that I'm moving on to something.
Yeah, he was pretty horrified when I said I was going to leave and go and do something else. He's like, oh, you can do that, you know, you should stay there. But that was how he was brought up, that you worked hard, you got a good job, and you stayed there and you retired and
you got a pension. And yeah,
life is so different these days.
Well, I remember when I was buying my first house at 18 and my dad said, what do you want to do that for? You carry on renting, it's good. Better, you don't want to saddle yourself with a mortgage. I'm like, okay. But I didn't listen to him first time ever. Yeah, it took me to when I was 18 to rebel against my parents. Talking about parents though, to kind of gauge where your mindset was at, and as you say, you've got a dad with Victorian values. When you were about 8, can you remember a time when you remember being, I'm really happy, I'm absolutely ecstatic, this is such a great memory? What lovely memory have you got of when you were happy when you were about 8 or 9?
Probably holidays, really. I think. I mean, I was one of those fortunate kids that loved school. I used to love going to school. I love going to school. I love going to grammar school. Loved the whole thing. And I was very sporty. I played a lot of netball and did that district and county athletics and was champion and all sorts of stuff when I was at school. But I think that just generally, I mean, it's a long time ago.
You could think it's like yesterday.
But my recollection, because we all know our memory plays tricks, is that generally childhood was just wonderful.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that my parents were very strict, and you know, you got what for if you broke the rules. That was very clear. It was a very different era then. But yeah, I remember arguing with my brother because he was 8 years older than I was. So we had some real ding-dongs, and he was one of those people that wouldn't argue.
Oh.
So frustrating. You try and have a good argument and you won't argue back.
So this is what's kind of shaped you, isn't it? So do you like a good argument now? Is that something?
No, I don't actually. I hate arguments. I absolutely. I know if I'm with, you know, I don't know if you're ever in a situation where you're with friends and married couple or something, they start to have a little bit of a. I find that really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Really, I don't like. And if you feel that they're sniping at each other a little bit, no, that makes me feel really uncomfortable. I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
But I think arguing with siblings maybe falls into a different category of.
Well, you kind of got this safety if they're always going to be there for you.
Yeah. And I suppose you're testing boundaries and stuff, aren't you, as well? And at that age, finding out a little bit more about what you can get away with and what you can't get away with.
So when you went into accountancy/auditing, is that because you love numbers? You were good at numbers?
No, I wanted to be a vet.
You wanted to what? Be a vet?
Be a vet.
Oh, wow.
So when I was at school, and we were doing our A-level selections, I needed to do physics, chemistry and biology to get into vet. And I wasn't allowed to because of the timetabling.
I had that, yeah.
And the other challenge was, and I don't know how true this was. I mean, looking back, I don't know how true it is. But I was very sporty, but I did nothing. I didn't do drama. I didn't do music. I didn't do any of that stuff. It's still not really my bag, and I definitely wasn't up for doing it at school. And the headmaster made it very clear to my mum that because he was very much the drama and the art side of the world, that he couldn't possibly give me a good report for university because I didn't do enough.
Oh.
I mean, the fact that the school's sports teams brought back nearly every bloody trophy there was to be had in the county.
Yeah.
Didn't cut any mustard with him at all. So, and then in those days when you used to apply to vet college, I think there were 5 vet colleges, but although you could put them in unprioritized, whoever you physically put at the top, if that wasn't, if it was London, Bristol would, even though Bristol were equally ranked, if they appeared second on the form, they wouldn't take you because you put, there's a whole load of malarkey around it. So I had 3 science A levels, and what was I going to do with them? So I went and did accountancy.
Okay. Do you ever regret that?
No, not really. No, because it got me into computers. It got me into looking at systems, process, understanding how data works. I did a lot of data work up later in my career. Problem solving, learning, picking up how things work really quickly because you were going to different clients every couple of weeks. You started off doing the photocopying and making the coffee. That was what you did as a junior.
Yeah.
The way it was, you learnt the job from the bottom up. I qualified. I did my chartered accountancy and everything, so I still do use it, some of it a bit. But no, I mean, I think sometimes, can you regret it? You make the best decision you can make at the time that you've got on the information that you've got.
Yeah.
And I think as I've got older, I realised you just need to accept that sometimes that wasn't the best thing, but at the time it was the best thing that you could do. And you make the best of it.
I think it doesn't become the best thing when you spend the rest of your life regretting it, and you should have made a change and gone for it at a later date. Maybe I didn't get to university till I was in my late 30s, and I don't regret going, but I didn't need to go. But it was I didn't need to go for what I wanted to do, or what I ended up doing, shall I say. I went and I became a primary school teacher, so I needed to go to get that degree, but primary school teaching was not the end goal for me, I don't think. So I went through this circuitous route to get to business coaching and being in business. So I'm wondering how you went from accountancy or wanting to be a vet into science, into accountancy and auditing, and now you've got the business kitchen.
So the story was, the only reason I got into accountancy was because when I done my A levels and went and did a biology degree at Portsmouth Poly, because it was then apparently one of the best biology courses in the country, because being polytechnic, it was very practical. Right. So we did lots of field trips and lab work and all the rest of it. It wasn't theoretical. We all remember how long ago this was. We're coming to the end a long time ago. When we're coming to the end of the degree and you start looking at the opportunities, what I would have loved to have done was become a field ranger. Yeah.
Right.
Basically got to wait for somebody to die.
Oh dear.
It was really it wasn't one of those places where there were burgeoning opportunities. It was like there were a set number of roles around the country.
Yeah.
And as they were mostly populated by people in their 20s, you could be waiting quite a long time. Yes. So I had a degree. And then what do you do? So there used to be these 2 amazing things, because there was none of this was online. You couldn't go and Google it. It's all in directories, printed directories. So there was something called Go and something else called DOG, which is directory of graduates, and then graduate opportunities or something. And so I looked at what I could do with a degree, and it was accountancy, NatWest, or the civil service.
Wow.
The civil service, I would have liked to have done inspector of factories, because that would be really interesting. So I went and did I don't know if you've ever interviewed for the civil service. I don't know whether they still do it the same, but I went to Basingstoke. And you've got to remember I was 20, I suppose. Went to Basingstoke, to the civil service building there, and went into this room, and it was I don't know how big it was, but you could, it was huge, this room, and there were 4 people sat behind the desk with the window behind them, and then there was a chair in the middle of the room.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I got asked ridiculous questions like, how would I solve the litter problem?
My goodness.
And then NatWest was an accelerated management scheme, but it meant that you could end up anywhere in the country if you wanted to, and that didn't suit me. And then I got an offer from Tusharos, which was the accountancy. The civil service did offer me a role, but it was in the unemployment benefit office in Exeter, which wasn't the remit of being the inspectorate of factories. So
no. It's funny. I don't know if you realize this, but when my kids grew up, it was like the world was their oyster, and there was so many opportunities. You know, dolphin trainer or whatever, anywhere in the world, and they wanted to travel and they wanted to get out there. When you and I were looking at, so I started work in '79. And it was civil service, local authority. I went for an interview with the Civil Aviation Authority. That was very glamorous. And that was, the world was very small.
They were very traditional roles. You know, I mean, I was talking to one of my friends a few years ago, and we were talking about, well, what would you have done? I said, well, if I was going to university now, and actually now I don't know I would go to university. I think I'd probably go and do apprenticeships, because you can do apprenticeships in pretty much anything these days.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know, I would have probably gone the sports business management route. Because I loved my sport. You know, I played netball in the winter. I played in, you know, I played school, district and county. I did district and county athletics. I used to score for all the basketball matches, do all the tees for the football matches, play football. I used to ride, you know, everything. I mean, something like sports business management would have been absolutely nirvana, but of course it didn't exist.
So when did you get to the point when you thought, I'm a square peg in a square hole and this is perfect for me? What leap did you have to take to get into where you are now?
I suppose the leap really was leaving the city, because once I qualified as an accountant, because most of that was auditing. It was the early days of computer auditing.
Right.
So it was in the days of doing lots of data analysis, obviously all around annual accounts and things, but it was in the days when we had punch cards, and so you used to stick the holes back on when you punched them wrong, and you know, great big sheets of computer paper in the old green and white 100%.
Oh my goodness, you're bringing back some memories now.
Think, what is she talking about? But that was our world, you know. But the whole thing about it was how do things work? And I like how do things work. And when I was a teenager, I used to work with my dad on our cars. I used to spend hours under bonnets taking apart gearboxes and engines and putting them back together again. When I had my own car, I did all my own car mechanics and bodywork and fiberglassing and the whole lot.
Wow.
Whole lot.
Yeah.
So computer auditing was really interesting, because it was that whole, how does the business work? How do they make their money? And then the whole thing about computers as well, you know, which used to be big blue boxes in very big large rooms with very large air conditioning units.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Computers on desks. And so I eventually joined JP Morgan as an internal auditor, bringing them a systems-based way of looking at things. I worked at ICI for a year doing some stuff. And then in JP, I did a whole load of stuff around building systems. So I wasn't a developer, but doing requirements. So it's always been about that problem solving type of thing. You know, how do you get this done? How does it work? How do we make it better? How do we make it easier? How do we control it properly? And then I was doing consultancy work in the city and getting a bit fed up with working in the city just because of commuting. And decided I had to go freelance in the city for consultancy work. Decided to move to Gloucestershire, which was by happenstance rather than design, which is a lot of what I've done really has been by happenstance rather than design. And decided that because I was still commuting into London when I first moved to Gloucestershire. So I was getting the 5 to 6 train in the morning.
Wow.
Getting home at, I don't know what, 8 o'clock or so. And thinking, well, it would be good to do this consultancy work with local businesses, but actually, which was naive in the extreme, because obviously the sort of size of businesses you need to be doing it with would be the Renishaws and the the Superdrys, and they're not going to open their door to some consultant that they've never heard of to come and do consultancy work for them. I mean, it's just not how the world works.
Yeah.
But what was evident from working with others was that small businesses really need more of the business management side of things, which is which I know well, you know, because having done it for a lot of times in corporate. So and then that was, again, it was problem solving. You know, how do you show somebody how to improve who they're selling to? Well, you help them look at who their ideal client is, because they probably don't know. They think they sell to everybody. There's no such thing as the general public.
What I've always found in small businesses is that you can be in your business and be very, very clever at your business, but you can't see the things that you're in the middle of, and you need somebody from the outside to look in and go, have you thought about doing that? And you're like, oh, that's brilliant, I hadn't thought about that, because you're in the middle of it, you can't see all the wood for the trees. And it's such
and of course, one of the advantages you have when you work in a large corporate is because you're working in teams the whole time, is you've always got people coming with different views on what's going on. So you've always got those challenges inherent in whatever, unless you've got a really dictatorial manager, but you've always got those challenges inherent in whatever the conversations are, because everybody's got different experiences, they've got different knowledge. If you're a small business, you haven't got that. Especially if you're a sole trader, or if you only got 2 or 3 employees who you probably treat very much as employees rather than members of a valued team.
Yeah.
Where's your sounding board? Where's your independent thought? Where's your challenge? Who's challenging you to say, why are you selling this to those people at £10? Because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one of the things I discovered, which I hadn't really got from corporate, was a lot of things, of course, is around limiting beliefs and self-belief and imposter syndrome. And
this is why I love the idea of collaboration and getting together in a team, because you can have a team of people and some of them might not understand what their limiting beliefs are, or what their triggers are, or how they react rather than respond. But if you've got 2 or 3 people that are tuned in to all of those things, they can help those other people, and they can kind of get them up to not the same level, because I think we're all at different levels anyway, but they can get them up to the same speed as where they are. Yeah. So that when there is a problem, as there usually is in a collaboration, it's called life, because life gets in the way. When life gets in the way, they've got ways and tools that they can use with each other to get over it and come out the other end. And come out.
And that's what you miss as a small business, I think. And I think the other thing obviously where we met was through BNI. And the only reason the business kitchen exists is because BNI, because that's where I met Nigel, and we started the business effectively. But what's interesting is I took over, when he retired a couple of years ago, I took over his advice clinics that we do for the Growth Hub. And he was he is a chartered marketer. So he did marketing advice clinics. And so the Growth Hub said, will you take mine? I said, yeah, well, I'm a marketer. I can ask sensible questions, but what turned out was that none of the advice, I've only done about a dozen, I think, over the 3 years. There isn't one that's talking about marketing.
Interesting.
They have all ended up talking about, well, where the hell is it you're trying to get to?
Yeah.
Because how can you do your marketing if you don't know what you're trying to achieve? So that people too many businesses start in the middle, because that's where all the noise out on social media. Oh, get the leads, and there's your sales funnel. Yeah, but that's not where you start.
Yeah.
You've got to start people. What's your outcome and your why and your purpose?
And people make these huge assumptions, don't they? And you go, yeah, I think I know that. And you go, so what is it? And you're like, not really sure. Yeah, and it's really interesting how it kind of permeates through everything, because if you start slap bang, as you say, in the middle, you've not got your foundation sorted out, and you're going to wobble.
How can you do your marketing if you don't know who your ideal client is?
Yeah, indeed.
You can't, because you're going to be, well, it's everybody. Well, no, you can't be everybody.
This goes back to your problem solving thing. I think this is a little speech marks over you. This is a little quote. This is your thing, problem solving, and understanding that in any aspect. I bet some of your mates are really frustrated with you, because you'll be asking why all the time, so that you can find the route for whatever it is that they're doing.
I do remember when I was doing some stuff I was at JP Morgan, and we were setting up a project to do something, and we were going through that ridiculous conversation with some of the teams that were involved about, well, how do you do this? And they go through how they do it, and you say, well, why? And they'd say, because we've always done it that way. And I said to my manager one day, I said, I'm going to go and get a whole load of paper, and I'm going to write why on every single piece, and I'm going to stick it on every single pillar in this office. Because if one more person says to me, because we've always done it that way,
yeah,
I think I'm going to lose it, because it's not a satisfactory answer. It's none of them ever said, oh, because it works really well doing it this way.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is the thing that most people don't kind of acknowledge, is that they get stuck in a rut, and it feels comfortable, and they don't like change. And why would I do it this way? This is the way we've always done it, and I know how to do it this way. And I know you're telling me that that way over there is better, but actually I don't know that way, so I don't really want to do that way, because this one is okay. Does it work? Well, not, yes, sometimes, not always, but no, not that often actually. And it's like, well, do you want to just try it? And it's like, well, I can. And what I realized when I was a kid, and I think I've said this before, is that I remember coming in from playtime and the teacher had moved all the desks around and everybody was moaning and whinging. And I was like, this is fun. I get to sit next to a new person. And the teacher went, oh, for goodness sake, stop fussing. Put your hand up if you like change. Nobody likes change. And as she'd said, put your hand up if you like change, I put my hand up and she'd carried on going, nobody likes change. And I kind of looked around and went, oh, it's just me then. I didn't. Okay, I'll put my hand down. And most
but
people,
what do you learn? What do you learn from that then, as you get older? Yeah, that you shouldn't stand out from the crowd.
well, yeah, exactly. Don't put your head above the parapet, because you might get shut down.
It's not safe out there.
Yeah, but also the fact, this revelation to me is that some people are just different, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm okay being different, and I I'm getting quite used to it, and the older you get, the more you like being different. But a lot of people I come up against, a friend of mine had this fabulous phrase, oh, she's in a fur-lined rut. And it's like, this rut is so cozy and comfortable and lined with fur, you're never going to get out of it. And it's like the couch to 5K. It's like, yeah, that's me. I'm in that fur-lined rut. Me do running? I don't think so. I'm going to stay in my little fur-lined rut and not do I might do something else, but I'm not doing the running bit. And the pandemic showed us that, didn't it? It's really interesting. Nobody wanted to stay at home because we were told we had to stay at home, but then we stayed at home and actually it was quite nice, wasn't it? And then nobody wants to go back to work again.
A lot of people got way too comfortable and have ended up being quite isolated, of course, because they drew everything in, didn't they, and didn't reach out at all. But
yeah,
I mean, the whole thing around problem solving is, I mean, it comes back to one of the things we were talking about before we started the podcast around, collaborators need to be curious, and I am inveterately curious.
Yes, yeah.
To the point of being probably positively annoying.
Love it.
Because, if you don't know the how and the why and the what, how do you understand the concept or the principle?
Mm-hmm.
Particularly in terms of, does it pose a risk? Does it not pose a risk? Is it innovative? Is it actually a rehash of something else? But if you don't ask questions, how do you learn anything? I mean, you can learn a lot of it by osmosis and following, which is sort of how we learn to walk and things. But
yeah,
you're not going to take any leaps of knowledge, are you? Really? And that's all part of the problem solving, because you can only understand it. You can only solve a problem if you start asking the right questions.
And there are so many people out there, and we're lucky in Collaboration Global. We've probably got half a dozen at least that get problem solving and are curious and are creative and want to try these things out and want to challenge each other, and it's a lovely kind of space. But there are an awful lot of people, probably I'm one of them, that problem solving, it's like, oh no, it's a problem, oh, I don't want to look that way, it's just and it's the unpicking it, the detail that you have to go into to find out the core of what the problem is. And this is reminding me of a video I saw on LinkedIn the other day. Simon Squibb posted it, and it was a YouTube clip with a lady called Izzy someone, hopefully some people have seen this, where a young woman is in Parliament as a youth MP.
Oh, I saw that.
Did you? Yeah, because I reposted it as well, because it was amazing. And she was talking about how education today is not fit for purpose. And we've known that. I mean, it wasn't fit for purpose when we were at school. So imagine what they feel like now with the onset of the internet and how things aren't done. But that's one of the powerful things that they could be taught at school, is problem solving. And you might be taught problem solving in a maths problem.
I know they do creative thinking, don't they? And no, critical thinking, I think, like some schools do. But it's interesting because one of our members, she's homeschooled both her children. I mean, she and her husband are both Oxbridge grads, so they're they're not doing it because they don't think education is important, but they're doing it because they weren't keen on where the education system was going.
Yeah.
And she was telling me a number of people homeschooling is growing, but you have to be mean, they're lucky they run a business that enables them to have time during the day. But if you're a couple of parents that are running office jobs, how you can't. I mean, you just can't homeschool. It's not an option for you. But there is more and more of this divergence, I think, from, as you were saying earlier, from the perceived standard way of doing things. And if you think of one of the things I'm doing, we've got the Watch Your Business show coming up in March, and I am chairing a panel. I chair panels on subjects I know absolutely nothing about. But
that's why you make a good chair. You ask questions.
I'm chairing a panel exploring the whole idea of creativity and innovation. And do we really understand what we mean by innovation, or is it one of those labels?
Yes.
Things get, and then comes in with a whole load of baggage and preconceived ideas about what innovation really means. And one of the times I was talking to one of the preparatory meetings, he was saying the challenge with innovation is that people think it needs to be big stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes innovation is very small things that actually, as we were talking about earlier, make a difference. But they're there because they are solving a problem or an issue or a challenge or leveraging an opportunity. And if we've got open enough mindsets to challenge the status quo, that's where you start seeing the benefits to communities and economies and all the rest of it, because it changes the paradigm.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got this massive tanker moving along, the economy or the political system, and then lots of little things are the ones that's going to move it and edge it a degree. Before you know it, it's going in a totally different direction. One of the things that reminded me when you were talking about challenging is innovation. Is Roman Kemp did a documentary about his best friend who committed suicide. And he said, one of the best things you can do for your friends is we all ask each other, don't we, mates, how are you? How are you doing? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you really? He said, asking that second question. Now, that gap between the first question and adding that second question must have saved lives over the last 6 months or more.
And what's interesting, of course, is that the question changed during the pandemic because people were really interested in how people were. My mentor, Peter Thompson, he has a bit of a trademark around how he says hello to people. So, you say, hello, Jill, how are you? And he will say, I'm fine, thank you for asking. How are you? But what he has done, this experiment, when he's been at like conferences and things, is somebody says, oh, hi, Peter, how are you? And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm fine too. Because they've asked the question, and they're not even vague.
That's
if you change your answer,
yes,
it's a pattern interrupt.
Yes.
And it makes the other person, we were talking about listening earlier, it makes the other person actually stop and listen because you said something completely different to yeah, I'm fine, even if you're not.
Yeah, but one of my things about that whole question is if you're feeling really low or miserable or depressed or grief-stricken or whatever, and when my parents died at different times, people would say to me, how are you? And I put on the face, they're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Now, if they had been nice to me and asked me again, I couldn't keep it up. I couldn't do it twice. I was
and it's about what question you ask, isn't it? Because if rather than saying, how are you, Jill, they'd said, how are you feeling? I know it's not been very long, or
yeah,
whatever. You'd have given a completely more vulnerable answer because there would have been a genuine interest in the question rather than it just being you open your mouth and these words come and actually there's nothing behind them.
Because we're not taught how to deal with the answer. That's the thing. And it's like people don't really want to know the answer because it might be something that's a bit awkward and they don't really want to say anything. But and I think there is a groundswell now. People realize that they have to care for their fellow man because the NHS can't do it for a start. There's not always these places you can go when people are at the end of their tether. So you have to look after your nearest and dearest and the people, some of the strangers, the neighbours that you have. When was the last time you spoke to a neighbour? I know yours are miles away, but anyone that was, got next to, I spoke to somebody the other day and said, oh, what's your neighbour's name? And they went, well, we've only just moved in, so we don't know yet. I said, oh, how long have you been there then? Oh, only about 18 months. Excuse me?
It's interesting with neighbours because I think one of the things that did come out of the pandemic was more of a sense of community, wasn't it, in a lot of places. But I remember when I moved into the house at Upper Islington, which was a no through road, so there were only 15 houses. You know, I got welcome to your new home from 8 of the immediate neighbours.
Lovely, that's nice.
And everybody always did that when somebody moved into the road. And there wasn't an intent that, like, let's have coffee and become buddy friends, you know. It
No, just good neighbours.
It was just and you know, we'd exchange Christmas cards, and you know, we go around for you go around for coffee. But that whole thing of just recognising, now obviously if you're living in the middle of London and stuff, it's a very busy road and everybody's out work a day, it's a bit of a different thing. But you know, there's ways that people can create those communities. You know, even if it's running. I mean, one of my friends now, I mean, she lost her husband a few years ago, and it's a tough time for her because it's the anniversary. She joined a book club, which just runs locally. You know, somebody set up and they put it on Facebook, and they have 5 or 6 people go. She said, I don't know if I read the books, but
I was like that. I belonged to a book club, and I was like, I used to go to find out what the book was about because I never got around to reading it. And some of them I was quite glad I didn't bother reading.
With, yeah, quite but yeah, so you get back to problem solving and the challenging and stuff. I think that we need to not be afraid. I mean, you've got to judge where somebody else is a little bit, because you know, most of them, our members particularly, I know I can challenge them. They know me well enough to know it's done with good intent, and it's usually quite often done with a bit of humour if I think it might be a rather direct question. But we need to gauge whether somebody's in a place where it's okay to challenge them, because if they're very fragile, their challenge is probably a really bad idea. Could actually make them, you know, could send them running for the hills very, very fast.
You have to ask permission, don't you? Yeah.
Ask that permission. But if we don't challenge things, and I'm not talking about demonstrating and protesting, but if we don't just in our day-to-day just challenge little things, how does anything ever change? You know, we'd still be living pre-industrial revolution if somebody hadn't bothered challenging things.
Indeed.
You know, we can't look at the tech in the world and all the things that are going on in the world and then be resistant to change. It sort of doesn't make sense.
I put a post up the other day about the new AI.
There's been some interesting discussions about that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we're going to do that at the Evolve session coming up as well, because it is interesting. But one person posted on, put a comment on my LinkedIn post about this Chat GPT, and it's like, don't fear new technology. It's teaching people to use it properly. That's the key. New technology is a thing. It's not it can't run away with us. We have to be the ones that make sure that it's, you know, treated, used responsibly.
It's a tool, and put it in the toolbox, but don't let the tail wagging the dog. You know, it's.
I think there will be some people that will use and abuse it. There's always someone that wants to do that.
You're never going to stop that.
Yeah.
One of the things I do in the monthly meetings, we have an optional challenge, and they can range from being totally frivolous to being quite serious. So it can be clear 5 things off your to-do list this month. You know,
that would be nice.
one of the ones was around that whole thinking about shiny new things, which are great, and especially when you're curious, you know, they're great. But how do you stop them being a rabbit hole?
Yes. Yeah.
So you go look at Chat GPT, and you know, 3 days later you're still looking at Chat GPT because I'm one of these people that does get stuck down rabbit holes, and I used to have a lady that worked with me, and she'll say, Jill, stop, it's below your pay grade, don't even look at it. We'll put it in the corner, we'll put it on the Trello board, and if we get time, then we'll have a look at it, but not now. So okay. This is great. I got told, but it was like, because my curiosity is insatiable, and I'm so, can I do this, and then I'll start something and it blossoms, but I'm over there watering something else, and that just dies, and it's like, well, what was the point of that? That was a waste of time. So it is. We had Richard Woods on one of our as a guest speaker, one of our meetings the end of the month, and he said his whole philosophy on business now is focus on one thing, one business, one product, one market, and just do that. And I'm like, yeah, you're very wise. And it's one of those things that I scattergun. That's my personality. That's how I am. And I know that actually much wiser to have that direct focus. And then it's how Carrie Green built Female Entrepreneurs Association. When she set that up, she focused only on Facebook, becoming an expert in Facebook.
Yeah. Which is not so great if Facebook gets hacked, which it has done, or you get hacked on Facebook. You're not so secure.
But she's now got, I don't know, 200,000 members, and
Well, there you go. Yeah.
but her whole thing was it's focusing on. She chose her platform and she focused on it. She said, I don't know if it was the right platform. I wasn't going to worry about that. I was going to pick one, and that's what she did for sort of 2 years of just building up a community and giving stuff free, and then obviously starting to convert it into sales and things. So, but it does come down to that, it's continually questioning and challenging, but being flexible. I love the C.S. Lewis quote of, you can't change yesterday, you can't change the beginning, but you can change the end.
Yeah.
Whatever happened 10 minutes ago is irrelevant.
Done. Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah.
There's another one which is about, well, wherever you are up to now, the first half was the rehearsal.
I like that. Yeah.
Everything up until now has been a rehearsal. Yeah. So
now it's the real thing. Stop mucking about. Get on and do it.
And count your blessings. We've talked about gratitude, but just look around, and there is always somebody worse off than you.
Yeah, well, that doesn't give me great joy, but I mean, I hear what you're saying, but also I look back whenever we've moved or done anything a bit risky, and we thought, oh, what if we lost everything because of what we've done? I mean, nowadays we don't risk everything, but when you're young and youthful and impetuous, you do these things. And I used to say to my husband, do you know what, even if we lose everything tomorrow, we're still going to have central heating, hot water, a bathroom and an indoor toilet, which my mum didn't have until my sister was 11. So it's like, we're never going to be that bad. It's okay. But let's go for it.
We had the indoor toilet. We didn't have central heating until Dad put it in when I was about 12. So
you had it in the lounge. We didn't have it until we moved into our first house in 1980. We moved in 82 and we got the heating in 83 because we knew someone who could do the plumbing for us.
Yeah, Dad did it all in those days. You didn't have to be a qualified gas engineer or something to fit gas. So he did it all himself, inevitably at the weekends and stuff. So
we are. I mean, you can look at the news and think we're all doom and gloom. We're all going to go to hell in a handcart. But actually, if you look at statistics, there are less homeless people than there were 20 years ago. There are less starving people than there were 20 years ago. There's more money in the economy. And probably some other good news that I can't think of off the top of my head. We are going in the right direction. I was listening to a discussion about food banks.
Oh, yeah.
And so many people were coming on the phone line and saying, I earn £32,000 a year and I would never dream of going to the food bank because I make ends meet. It's called budgeting. These people that go to food banks possibly don't always need to. And those that do it because they're on a much lower salary than me. So if somebody's on £32,000, they need to go and stop smoking or stop drinking. Or
choice. It's always about choices. I mean, I was saying, I was talking to my goddaughter earlier and saying it's funny how people look at things like this recession and stuff. And I was in Marks before Christmas just getting some nice bits of food. And the lady behind me was, she made her own Christmas cake and her own mince pies and da-da-da-da-da. And she had a full trolley. To be fair, it was full of raw ingredients. It wasn't full of processed food, although she had a bit of party food in there, which you inevitably do if you're going to Marks before Christmas. But she was talking about how much the cost of food was going up, and I had to stop myself laughing because I'm thinking, yeah, and you're stood in Marks and Spencer's with a full trolley. Perhaps you want to make some different choices about
because
she had bread and stuff in there which she could have bought somewhere else. It was funny that she was arguing about the cost but hadn't really looked at where she was and what she was doing.
I remember back in the day when we had various problems with the first business that we had, and we ended up with -0, so we had to economize, she said, putting it mildly, for about 2 years. And we watched everything that we ate. We didn't have any excess, didn't have takeaways, didn't go to restaurants, didn't go to the cinema, go to the theatre, nothing. We entertained at home with kind of mates coming around with beans on toast, if that was the biggest we did. And a friend of ours said, oh, let's treat ourselves, let's go out for dinner. And we went, we can't, we don't have the money. She said, oh, well, we'll get a takeaway then. We can't, we don't have the money. Oh, but you've got to treat yourself sometimes.
No, but you don't actually.
We can't, no. So it would have been nice if they'd said, because they were doing okay, thank you very much, come over to us and we'll treat you to a takeaway. That would have been nice.
That would be my reaction.
But yeah, so that, I think they ended up coming around to us for beans on toast. And you don't mind sharing what little you have, that's fine. But it's like everybody goes through tough times, and it's a really good reminder of, I don't want to go back there. I'm going to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the other question is, you know, have we forgotten as a, you know, as a country or as people that we've got a lot. I mean, I remember when, you know, as a kid and mum had, was she working? No, she probably wasn't working when I was at primary school. She worked when I was at primary school. She had a green tin, which was about yay long, about what, no, a foot long, I suppose, and it had 6 compartments in it. And that was the gas, and that was the coal. We didn't have gas at the time. Coal. That was the electric. We didn't have a phone. That would have been the food bill. That would have been, you know, for household stuff, maybe laundry, because the sheets all went off to laundry in those days. And when Dad got paid, the money went in the boxes, and what wasn't in there wasn't available to be spent. You know, there were no credit cards or anything. You know, so
I don't blame the generation at the moment that are finding it difficult to budget, because one, at school they've not been taught how.
No, precisely.
And 2, what we have been taught is how to bloody consume.
Yes, precisely.
So they are having it in their face 24/7 on their phones. Buy this, buy this, buy this. There's eBay, there's Amazon. It's easy. We'll deliver it. You can have it over 12 months. You can have whatever you want. It's just there for the press of a button. And we've lost cash. So you don't feel like it's not real money anymore. It's a little bit plastic. That doesn't really count. So it must be so tough.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. But there are some of those principles. I noticed as one of the local coaches in Gloucestershire is a money coach, and she is running stuff for, and I think Martin Lewis is doing some stuff in schools around budgeting and understanding about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a missing piece, and the thing I suspect is that it's more than the current generation. These are probably these are at least the second generation or the third generation this is happening to. So they haven't got the habits of their parents to follow. Their parents probably
make do amend. That was our parents were from that generation of rationing, and you could never take anything for granted. And if you had a piece of chocolate, like a Mars bar, you never had it all to yourself. It was always chopped up and you'd have a piece of it. And it's like all those things that our children and our children's children won't hopefully won't ever experience.
Well, hopefully they won't experience, because it's not fun. But there are some principles we can go back to that like budgeting. You know, if you haven't, where does Netflix sit on Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You know, it's probably not in the bottom one, is it really?
Yes.
I know the internet's right at the bottom, but
yeah, it's interesting.
Not the new drawing. But
well, listen, we have been 2 old women having a good whinge. I think it's been lovely. And I'm going to call it to a close now. We've looked at we've talked about your integrity and honesty and kindness in the world and respect for where people are. We've worked out that your genius, your magic little grist to the bone, is problem solving, and how wonderful it is for the business kitchen that you run to have that genius within it. We've heard about your journey through life and getting your qualifications and becoming an accountant, going, not my thing really, and then moving on. And I think a lot of people will resonate with that kind of stuff as well. So small hinges swing big doors. That's my takeaway from today, Gill. Thank you so much for joining us today. If anybody's interested in contacting you, finding out more about the Business Kitchen, or indeed sending you an email, what's the best way to contact you?
Best way to contact me is my email, which is Gill, that's Gill with a G, @thebusinesskitchen.net.
Lovely, thank you. And of course, if you're interested in Collaboration Global, our community of which Gill is a member, we have monthly meetings for guests. They're always on the last Tuesday of the month, apart from December. So our first one of the year is 31st of January 2023. You're very welcome to come to that or any of the others and meet Gill in person. Well, sort of, it is on Zoom. So wherever you are in the world, you can join us if you'd like to. And you can go to collaborationglobal.org, the website, and find the link to book for that. It's free to come along and you'll meet some fascinating people. Or go to Eventbrite, we're on there as well. So thank you again for a fascinating conversation, Gill. I wish you every success in the coming year with what you're doing and what you're aiming to achieve. It's been great talking. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Gill.
Take care.